All right, I think we are good to go. Hey guys, I'm Tom the Tech Chap, and this is a camera comparison between the iPhone 13 Pro Max and the brand new S22 Ultra. So I thought I'd start with a little video side by side. These are being shot at 4K 30, and you can also hear my voice as I switch between the microphones. So you can have an idea of the sort of video quality, also the stabilization as I'm walking along here. And I figured I'd show you around. This is actually Wells Cathedral, the smallest city in England, and it's got a ton of old stuff. Then there is this place, which is actually the oldest still standing medieval street in Europe, I believe. Cobbled steps here, so putting that stabilization to the test. It's funny, when my wife Sarah moved here from the US, she thought everything looked like it was straight out of Harry Potter. Which I guess it kind of does. There is even a castle with a bridge and a moat, which usually has some swans in, although I can't see them at the moment, because you may also know that this is where they filmed Hot Fuzz, and those swans 15 years later continue to be hilarious for the local constabulary.
It's about 2 foot tall, long, slender neck.
Yeah.
Look, found him. And this is why you need a good zoom lens for when you're swan spotting. So that is the maximum zoom for 4K video, 9 times on the iPhone, 20 times on the S22 Ultra. But realistically, I think the most you'd want to go is 10 on video. Okay, hopefully that doesn't fall over. But they both do have a few tricks up their sleeve. For example, the Samsung can shoot in 8K, 24 FPS, still not 30 for some reason, whereas you're obviously topping out 4K 60 on the iPhone, although I don't know how many people really shoot in 8K or want to. We also, of course, have that 10 times telephoto lens as well, but then on the iPhone, you can shoot in ProRes at 4K 30 or 1080p 60, and particularly in low light, it does noticeably reduce the noise. Obviously, it whacks up the file size hugely, and because of that lightning port, it can be a bit tricky actually taking it off the phone. Most of the time I use AirDrop and try and keep the clips shorter, but certainly that does increase the quality. One thing they both have now is a video portrait mode, so let's turn that on. Oh, like magic. I have been very impressed with the cinematic mode actually. I think the separation between the subject, me, and the background's been pretty good. Of course, you are limited to 1080p 30, no 4K, and no even 24 FPS option, which is the cinematic frame rate, which is a bit bizarre. You can of course change the aperture, that bokeh effect on the iPhone before or after you shoot. It's currently I think f4, so a little less severe. To be fair though, I'm not really sure how often people actually use this kind of mode. I'll tell you what is quite popular though, taking photos. So let's switch over to the lovely and ever so subjective world of photography. So we have 3 camera lenses on the iPhone and 4 on the S22 Ultra. They both have an ultra-wide, a main, and a 3 times optical zoom telephoto, with the S22's extra lens giving us a stalkery 10 times optical, which is actually quite usable even up to 30 times. And you can still go nuts up to 100 times, aka space zoom. Which is both impressive and still a bit useless. I mean, fair play for a phone, handheld, it is pretty good, but realistically I found it a lot more useful for checking train times or reading text at a long distance. It can come in handy, just don't be weird. But I do think for the sheer versatility of having that extra 10 times zoom, point to Samsung. However, at the other end of the spectrum, both phones do have a macro mode, and while they both do a good job, the iPhone does have a shorter focal length, so you can get even closer. So that's a macro point to Apple. Now, one request I get a lot in these camera comparisons is to test the camera with moving subjects, not just me with a cup of tea in my hand for some reason. And so here is Sylvie, usually the antithesis of a fast-moving object, but I managed to catch a couple of her yawns. And in this first shot, the S22 has nailed the focus, with the iPhone looking a little softer. But then in my second shot, they're both nicely in focus, although again, you can see that difference in the field of view. There's a lot more in the frame on the Samsung. Back outside, I decided to scare off a few pigeons, although the first thing you notice is the iPhone gives us a much brighter photo, but it has kind of overexposed the pigeons a little bit. So I did manage to get a few in-flight shots. This is not scientific by any stretch, but I think the Samsung just edges out in front. And finally, meet Lex. I wish he was my dog, but he did let me take a few photos, and there is a stark difference between the phones. Now I'll tell you, I always use a microfiber cloth on the cameras before each shot, but the iPhone just looks washed out and flat. The S22 is arguably too contrasty, and we do lose some detail in the darker areas, so perhaps the iPhone is better for editing in post, but when Lex's owner asked me to send her photos of the dog, I sent the Samsungs. Alright, so back to me with my cup of tea, and let's look at some portrait mode shots. And the good news is both phones let you tinker and adjust the bokeh after you've taken the photo, and you can also play around with various lighting options, which all look kind of bad. If you follow me on Instagram, at the Tech Chat by the way, you'll have seen me post this portrait shot, and as you can see there is a big difference in the contrast, the color tone. Although, zooming in, you can see the iPhone's edges are a bit softer. The S22 can pick up individual hairs, which is pretty crazy. Although I do like how the iPhone introduces the bokeh, that blur on my right shoulder, as it is further away from the camera like you'd see on a proper DSLR. But despite that, I've got to go with the S22 on this one. Now just quickly, for the sake of continuity of this video and why I suddenly have shorter hair later on, I did get my hair cut today, with a number 4 on the back and sides and a little scissor trim on the top, if you're wondering. On any new phone though, one of the first things I download is Surfshark VPN, who are very kindly sponsoring this video and who are my go-to VPN buddies. Because there are so many to choose from, but for me it's the fact that there's an app for pretty much everything, every phone, tablet, PC, even web browser. Also, just one account lets you use an unlimited number of devices, which is very handy for me. Plus, it's just really simple to use and it works. So I use Surfshark VPN to get around region-locked streaming websites like Netflix and Hulu, but also crucially to stay safe online, as their clean web tool helps to prevent tracking, malware, ads, all those nasty things. But the best bit is if you click the link below or enter the code TechChat at the checkout, then you can get a whopping 83% off and 3 months extra for free. Plus, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. So why not give Surfshark VPN a try today, or tomorrow, whenever's convenient for you, but I do urge you to give it a try. Okay, sun's down, camera's out. Let's see what these can do at night. And the first question I had is, do we get lens flare? And the answer is, yes, on both, with the starburst of the lamps and the little green lens flares, although it is a bit more prominent on the iPhone. In fact, let me show you some 4K video I shot on both phones, and you can see how the lights react in real time. Hey Sarah.
Hi.
Which one of these phones would you take if you had to pick one?
Neither.
Why?
I got a Pixel.
Damn it, should have included the Pixel. Good answer. So they both pick up some lens flares, although it is more obvious on the iPhone, and so perhaps that new clear glass on the S22's main lens is helping. But more importantly, the iPhone stabilization is doing a much better job than the S22, where you can really feel each step as it vibrates. I know my friend Supersaf had a similar experience, and this may need a software update. But to be fair, Samsung hasn't mentioned anything to us or asked us to wait, so fingers crossed it gets improved, and keep an eye out on my pinned comments below as I will update it if anything changes. Now the big difference for low light photos is the color and the white balance. And actually I do prefer the S22 here. We still see the white of the lights in the middle, but that doesn't overwhelm the entire shot, and it naturally fades back to the realistic orangey tones that are coming from the nearby streetlights. They've both done a good job here, although the iPhone is a little washed out by the lights, and we're losing some of that contrast. But the S22's white balance trips up here with an unnatural yellow tone to the whole photo. Now, while the S22 is a little oversaturated, particularly on Sarah's face, the colors, particularly in the background, are more true to life. The iPhone perhaps aesthetically looks nice, but the altered white balance is overcompensating for the tungsten ambient light. It's the same story with me. Look at the color of the lapels on my jacket and my face. Again, it's definitely a bit too saturated on the S22, but the iPhone goes too far the other way. And also, the Samsung is more detailed, and that flat, overexposed iPhone look sometimes just doesn't look good. Okay, back in the studio now, and I'm really impressed here how the S22 handles the dynamic range, particularly on my neon sign. And in fact, the whole photo looks cleaner and sharper. The iPhone can still look good, but if we zoom into Marty's face, you can see there is more detail on the Samsung. Although the iPhone does get a point here, as the color is spot on. The S22 is too blue, and also some of the detail can be lost in those darker shadows. Even with a 3x zoom portrait shot, you can really see that field of view and focal length differences. Looking at my face and my eyes though, the S22 packs in a ton more detail. The thing is though, even if the S22 is overtaking the iPhone, sometimes the 13 Pro just hits right with that flatter exposure and warmer tone, so we get a more pleasing, Instagrammable photo, if you like. What do you think? Low light selfie video this time. Still at 4K 30, although not in ProRes on the iPhone, which you do have the option of, which would even increase the quality further. What do you think though? This is going to be a bit of an analog for, say, if I had a social life and I was outside at a pub maybe and recording a drunken selfie on the way home. Let's change the lighting up. Looks like I've got a wider field of view on the iPhone, which is very useful for selfies. I do like though that both phones have a little green light next to where the camera is, so you always know where to look when you're taking a selfie. So the iPhone 13 series didn't really upgrade the selfie camera, but I have found the S22 is quite a big improvement over the S21, even though they share similar hardware. And so here the Samsung is noticeably more detailed. Even in portrait mode, the skin tones, the contrast, the detail, the iPhone just keeps coming out too soft. It's not bad, but I hope we do see some improvements on the 14 series later this year. So, the big question, which is best? Well, the iPhone is generally brighter, warmer, and flatter. Subjectively, it may look more Instagram ready, but it's not always the most realistic. It does take better macro shots, and also switching lenses while filming is still more seamless. Plus, its cinematic mode, ProRes support, and stabilization, I think, give the iPhone the win for video. And sometimes I do just like how the iPhone takes photos, but that is very subjective. Now, comparatively, the S22 Ultra is darker with heavier contrast and shadows. It does have a wider field of view, so you get more in the frame, and shots are often more detailed. Plus, that extra 10x telephoto makes it the zoom king, and together with more camera modes, including the Pro mode if you want to tinker, the option to shoot at the full 108 megapixels, or even record 8K video, the S22 is more versatile. I also found the microphone to be a touch cleaner with better background noise reduction. The selfie camera is sharper, and it's also good to see that social media apps can now take advantage of the S22's camera features. So it is a tough one. I think realistically, which one you go for is going to come down to the ecosystem. Whether you have an iPad, an Apple Watch, or a Mac, you know, even if the camera is better on this, the ecosystem's going to sell it for you on this. But in terms of just the cameras, well, I'm lucky enough that I get to have both and carry both around with me. But if I could only take one, I know most YouTubers tend to just sit on the fence here, and I'm tempted to because they are both extremely good phones and cameras. You really can't go wrong with either. But if I had to just take one with me, I would go with the S22 Ultra. It's just a bit more versatile, and I think it's a pretty solid upgrade even over last year's S21 Ultra. But more importantly, what do you think? Which phone came out on top in the camera department? Let me know in the comments below. And also, if you did enjoy the video, a little like and subscribe. And also that, what do you call it? The bell icon thing. Because I think only about 15% of you lovely subscribers actually get notified when I post a new video. So make sure that's checked as well, that little ding-a-ling bell. I'll also leave links in the description below if you fancy buying one of these. And actually right now through my affiliate link, I think you can get some Samsung credit if you buy one of these, which is very tasty. And I will see you next time right here on the Tech Chat. Thanks for watching. Oh, and also don't forget to check out Surfshark VPN. Click the link below or use the code TechChat to get 83% off and 3 months extra for free. I use it and I love it, so give it a try.